So it's time for the God panel today. And on the God panel today, we're going to be talking about whether you would marry someone from a different religious background to you. And do you think if you did, you can have a successful marriage if your partner's from a different religion? What are your thoughts on this? 03459 440 445. TV and radio host Larry King said that his 22-year relationship with his now ex-wife came to an end because of their difference in beliefs when it came to God. Larry is agnostic atheist and his wife is Mormon. So do you think this sort of thing is inevitable if you have different beliefs when it comes to God? Or can you make relationships work despite a difference of something so fundamental as religion? Maybe some of you listening are actually in interfaith marriages right now. Have there been challenges? Have you been able to make it work? What's it been like? And for those out there who aren't married, would you partner up with someone who's not the same religion as you? Get in touch, let me know. 03459 440 445, or you can text 81869 to discuss this. On the panel with me today, Sikh Mandeep Kaur Moore, Muslim Naveed Khan and Hindu Sam Pandey. But first, let's go to Priti Mohyal, whose dad's a Christian and mum is Hindu. Priti, morning. Good to speak to you. Tell us, first of all, how have your parents been able to make it work?
Hi, good morning. So basically, growing up in a diverse Hindu Christian family, my parents just respected each other's values. For example, we would celebrate Christmas, Easter, and at the same time, Diwali would just be as significant. If my mom wanted us to pray, for example, on special occasions like Garba Jat, Hindu celebrations, we would participate. And if my dad sent us to a Catholic school, we'd have mass in the morning or Christian celebrations. And they just respected each other. They had the conversations. It didn't really hinder our upbringing, me and my siblings. It's just that ability to respect. And with Larry King, what I think is, it's not just the basis of having different faiths. It's also a lot of other factors, the compatibility of whether they were able to respect each other's differences. And there comes a point where if two people are going to be married, you just got to accept the person for who they are. On another note, I would say Hinduism and Christianity is very open and accepting of other cultures. What I would say is, if my dad said to my mom, my religion is higher than yours, my faith is higher than yours, then that would be problematic.
Would you yourself, Priti, have an interfaith marriage?
Yeah, I mean, my partner is Christian, so I would bring my Hindu elements into my life. My future family, my future children would have those Hindu elements as well. And I think it's beautiful growing up in two different cultures because kind of have the best of both worlds. And it's really important when two people are together from two different faiths for one not to say to the other, hey, you know what? I need to make sure that my values supersede your values. It's about equilibrium and just respecting, because at the end of the day, two people coming together, it's not about one being higher than the other.
Okay, Priti, thank you very much for that. Stay there. Had some messages coming on this already, 11:45. If you are a practicing religious person, this text reads, then it's difficult to manage it. Do you agree with that text, or do you agree with Priti? 81869, let me know. Right, let's go to our guests here. Sam, what are your thoughts?
I think in terms of the youth today, vast majority of them are probably non-practicing, to be very honest. They're very much part of their religion because it's part of the community background, as opposed to their genuine conviction in the beliefs. So for that populace, when faith has never, and by faith we really mean the belief systems and the philosophies, when they've never played a role in their life, of course things like interfaith marriages don't really mean anything, because for them, their faith is, in the nicest terms, superficial, in the sense that it's all about the festivities and the celebrations, as opposed to the genuine path of, salvation, enlightenment, whatever the goal of the faith is.
So in that sense, would you have no issue with it yourself?
I think personally, if I felt that somebody was on the same path of enlightenment as me, because that matters to me, then I would be fine with it. Because even within, let's say, like the Hinduism, because it's such an umbrella term, there are thousands of different ideologies within them that I probably wouldn't marry into because we share fundamentally different metaphysics. But I would probably share very similar metaphysics to, let's say, a Sikh. Sure.
Can I just say, so sorry, it's really nice what you're saying. Just to kind of reiterate the point that I was making, like my father would pray to Jesus in the morning, and my mom would have her be and do chanting to Ganesh, Shiva, Shera Wali Mata. So, two people can pray in different faiths together as long as they respect each other's faith.
Of course, but he's saying for him...
of enlightenment.
But he's saying for him, that's something that he, for him it will be a bit more difficult.
I think prayer is something that everyone connects to because prayer is fundamentally the same in every faith, which is the absolute surrender to whatever your form of divine is. However, those very concepts of divine do have huge differences. Within Abrahamic faiths, there is a creator deity, there is a monotheistic aspect to it. With more Eastern faiths, is more philosophies about consciousness and awareness. So deities are not necessarily, within Hindus at least, Shiva, Ganesh, Vishnu, they're not necessarily the finality, they're more the medium for your enlightenment. So, and then I guess... Obviously, then there's all the further ramifications of things such as reincarnation. Like, would you believe in something like reincarnation, which is a fundamentally different worldview to something like believing in one life, heaven or hell?
Okay. Let's bring in our other guests here on this one. Naveed, what do you think?
I think it really depends on what your priorities are. For example, when you're looking for a spouse, you might look for someone in the same career as you. I know people who say that they can't marry someone unless they go to the gym 3 times a week, or this happens or that happens. And I think if your faith is really that important to you, then maybe someone might find it a little bit harder, because for me, it's the example of if I knew about an investment opportunity that could earn me millions, and I knew that my spouse had lots of money to invest in that, I would be very selfish to invest in it myself and not encourage them to invest in it as well. And I think your faith is something similar, because the investment opportunity for me is the everlasting reward in the hereafter, and the investment opportunity my spouse has is investing their time into it. So for me not to share that with my spouse, or not want to share that with my spouse, it'd be quite difficult for me. But that's because faith is a huge part of my life and it's a big priority. And for others, their priority might be finding a spouse in other areas, and that's fine as well.
Okay, so I will bring you in on this, Mandy, in a moment. But on that point there, Naveed, what are you saying? Are you saying that faith is paramount, therefore it doesn't matter which faith it is as long as they are a person who follows a religion, or even if they did have the same faith as you but were a little bit more apathetic, would that be an issue as well?
So I think once again it comes down to which part of the faith is important to you. For example, some people it might be enough for them that someone does believe in God or does not believe in God. But for me, it was the fact that they would be a practicing Muslim. And I think I share some empathy with what you're saying as well, Sam, because you talked about the different ideologies in Hinduism and how you'd find some of them a lot more compatible with you. And it was the same for me within Islam. There are so many different ideologies, and it's about finding something that would be compatible with me and the way I want to live my life.
Would it be compatible for you if they were a Muslim and let you be very practicing, but actually they themselves were not? Would that be an issue at all?
I think it's about whether I would choose to marry someone in that area, because...
And would you?
I wouldn't, and I am married, and the faith was a really big part of my decision, because when I think about the decisions we're going to make later on in the future, or even socialising, what we're going to do for fun, where will we go on holiday, how will we bring our children up, where will we live, etc., etc., all of these things play a big part into your life later on. And rather than set myself up for something that may fail because of those fundamental differences that I really care about, why would I not choose to go for someone who matches the things that I care about?
Well, what are our thoughts, listeners? 81869, do you agree with Naveed or with Sam, who actually, they think actually for them and for many other people, it's about how invested you are in your faith. Is that an issue for you? Or like Priti, do you think actually things can work? You can make adjustments, and the ultimate fundamental is that you are a team who are equal in your own way. Can being from different religions put a strain on marriages, on relationships? Let me know your thoughts. Mandeep, what do you think about this then?
Hi, so I think it varies from person to person. If somebody is quite religious,
For yourself, we were talking
for
about.
myself, I think I'm on a journey. What I did and how I practiced Sikhi 5 years ago is very different to what I do now. So just by way of example, in April 2017, one day when I was doing seva at Park Avenue Gurdwara in Southall, I walked past an Amrit Vela. And in the Amrit Vela, what they were doing was they had all the lights dimmed down and everyone was doing Simran. And I'd never come across this before. And actually after that, I decided that what I wanted to do every other Saturday was to try and, because obviously it's quite difficult during the week, to try and actually participate and partake in that, and actually ended up going on this journey where I do it now quite regularly.
Can you tell us a little bit about what an Amrit Vela is for people who might not know?
Amrit Vela is basically the sacred hour. You have one in the morning, so at 4 o'clock when they do the Prakash of Guru Granth Sahib Ji, everyone comes together and they do prayers. And what I participate is in the Simran. And then there's another Amrit Vela, which isn't actually regularly spoken about, but it's one in the evening. So it's actually the times which change from when you go from night to morning with sunrise and sunset. So those are the hours. So actually it was I think everyone is on an individual journey. You can't really say that what works for you today will work for you in 5 years' time. I think if you kind of see yourself being on a journey and you see yourself actually going in one direction and you feel like the person that you may be speaking to or dating is on a completely different wavelength, or they're completely headed in a different direction, and the kind of family and the background behind them is very different to yours, and you feel that actually just because you feel, and another thing is ego. I find that a lot of people, when they end up going along a journey, ego has a huge part to play in it, because if you actually put that ego behind you and you actually think of all the benefits, and effectively when someone becomes more religious or becomes more on a path, that ego should start fading.
So with that in mind, if the person who you are with wasn't as religious as you but supported you, would that make it an issue at all or not?
To be honest, I don't think it would.
Okay.
I think the only thing that would be an issue, I think, for me personally, is not living with the person, because I'm sure if it's a nice person and they are understanding of the things that I need to do, and I'm understanding of the things that they need to do, both financially, emotionally, physically and spiritually, then it shouldn't really be a problem. However, having said that, for me it would be quite important, very important actually, in fact, to have a Sikh marriage ceremony. And for a Sikh marriage ceremony, I couldn't do that, and I wouldn't do that with a non-Sikh.
Okay. Interesting thoughts here from our four panellists. What are your thoughts at home? 81869. Most wars, this WhatsApp message starts, are due to religion, so I don't believe marrying someone with a different religion would work. Thank you for those thoughts there. We've only got a few minutes left. We've talked about your personal positions on this, when they could work, when they couldn't work. Let's talk a little bit about children, though, as well. Naveed, you mentioned there raising children. That would be something that has to be a discussion. Why is that important for you in that way?
I think marriage in itself is a compromise. There's a decorum to the compromise, and making sure that both of you are happy with the decision you're making, but also ensuring that both of you are represented in that decision. And I've seen it with people around me. When they have children, the mother will want this and the father will want that, and it's fair enough because both are coming from different backgrounds with different ideologies and different aims for life. So when it comes to children, it would be very difficult to find that common ground. And I think some people can find the common ground, but there's a lot more compromise needed. What about yourselves?
I think I'm the youngest of the panelists here. I'm just 20 myself.
Not thinking of children, are you?
Not really, no. I think I very much do resonate with what Naveed is saying, throughout. I think even when you're entering the marriage, you are obviously thinking long term about children, etc. With something like interfaith, you really have to think about what values you kind of want your children to grow up with as well. Kind of picking up on what I was saying earlier about the reincarnation stuff. Do you teach your kid that you're going to stay in the world as your atoms are just going to be recycling in the universe? Or do you think that there is only one life and there's either you do this or you do that? They're two very different finalities almost as well. So I guess those are things that you should consider, I guess.
I will come to you on this, Mandy, but I do want to bring Priti in on this as well now, because you were talking about being a child of two different faiths, but for you yourself with your partner, is this something that you've talked about at all?
Yes, definitely. My partner's family, the parents are very Christian, and I myself am Hindu Christian, and we talk about Indian culture. I love meditation, going to the Hindu temple, knowing about the different deities. It's about just respect, and growing up in two different faiths, it was a beautiful thing to see my mum and dad not enforce each other's values on each other, but just appreciate each other. And like the lady just said about ego, if you don't have ego, you're accepting of other people. And there was a gentle...
So which side, I want to correct myself there. I don't want to say side, but so you have, Christian and Hindu parents, right?
Yes.
Which one do you said you identified more Hindu, is that right?
No, I identify with both. I've always said that. I identify with both. And everyone has, their own interpretation of what their faith and spiritual concepts are. And, it's okay to respect both. If there's no one hierarchy to another, this is what causes problems, I think. And this is where people can have conflicts in relationships with different faiths. We're on this planet for a limited time. And just to appreciate the different faiths that are out there.
So what happens if both of the services are on the same day? So if, let's say, it's a Christian that needs to go to the church on a Sunday and it's a Sikh that needs to go to the Gurdwara on a Sunday?
Yeah, that's fine. I I remember my parents, if something fell on the same date, they'd just manage it. They'd just go to...
have you thought at all... Sorry, Priti, have you thought at all about death in this at all? Because for Christians it is normally burial, for Hindus it is reincarnation and cremation. When it comes to those sorts of things, so what's the thought there been?
Yeah, so for example, I have two sisters, and last year I went to Varanasi in India, where lots of cremation happens. When people die, they are cremated and put into the river Ganges, and that's my mother's wishes. I believe I'd like to go like that one day. One of my sisters would like to go in a different way, more of a burial. Everyone has their own interpretation of their faith and what they believe in. There's no one way.
Just like a one quick question.
Tell you what, Sam, do you mind holding it? Because we're going to break for the news. Priti, if you're okay to stay, let's take this over. We've got loads of messages to read out as well. We're going to come back and start with Sam's question. Right, so can interfaith marriages work? That's what we're talking about today. Priti is someone who is one of our panellists on the God panel who says absolutely it can. She is a product of one, and she intends to do the same for her children as well. And this message here, this email, agrees with Priti, saying, "Hi Casa, totally agree with Priti. I'm Hindu, my partner is Christian. We respect each other's beliefs. So does our 15-year-old daughter." So, there is another example of where it works. But before the news, Sam had a question for Priti. What was it then?
So this is a more philosophical question here, but about your concept of God. Do you think that God is a deity in the heavens? And very much distinct from creation? Or do you think that divinity is within you and part of, the only thing that exists is divinity? It is only consciousness.
Yeah, Christianity says don't believe in idols, right? And Hinduism is all about idols and deities.
But it's not about the idols or deities. It's about the actual...
I understand. For me, it is God is within you. So the latter part of what you said. And for me, it's the idea of the spirit and the soul, rather than believing in one significant deity above. And that's my interpretation of my reading of two different faiths. And that's what I believe in. I believe how you treat others is how you treat God. And, just your idea of being just a good person, a good human being, and accepting that this world is multifaceted and full of differences. And
so wouldn't that be a very...
willingness to accept that.
So just touching on the idea of treating others as you would treat God, that's a very kind of open it like a Vedic, like dharmic perspective. Isn't that very antithetical, in terms of just pure teachings, to, let's say, an Abrahamic teaching where divinity does not reside within the individuals, where the creation and creator are absolutely distinct?
I think with religion, so there's different interpretations and different texts, and you can dilute it as much as you want and interpret it, and
But then what about like traditional interpretations that are like established schools of thought, philosophy, etc., that are obviously far more important than individual interpretations?
So I feel like what I'm taking away from this is the fact that maybe by adjusting some of your perceptions of it or interpretations of it, it's easier to blend that in with other people. But I think you raised a really good point earlier as well, Priti, because you talked about tolerance and you talked about how your parents were both very tolerant of one another. And I think that's a really beautiful thing. But I also feel that you can be very tolerant of others, and that's completely fine. You can be very tolerant of your spouse, but for me, when I'm making a life plan,
100%,
when I'm making a plan to move forward with my life, it's not about being intolerant. It's about finding someone with a common ground and moving forward together rather than having to adjust your views and opinions, because it might make it hard. It might lead to a sense of lack of satisfaction. But at the same time, everyone is able to make their own decisions and prioritize what matters to them.
Naveed, you yourself, right at the start, talked about the fact that marriage is something that is about compromise. Yeah. So isn't it then okay for a marriage to work for someone such as Priti or many, people, forget just Priti, people, to make slight compromises on what doesn't matter as much to them from their faith background?
Exactly. And I think that's the key word, slight compromises. Definitely. I think when you find someone who's making large compromising and sweeping compromises, it might make things more difficult. And sometimes people are able to make them and do make them, and marriages are successful, but there requires a lot more work to do that. And you're not going to compromise on something that doesn't matter to you either, because if it's really valuable to you, someone will never ever compromise on that.
Mandy, what are your thoughts?
So I just think, in terms of making compromises, there are many things you can compromise, but it depends on, I think, also how religion a couple is. If somebody is very religious and if a practice is deemed as this is something, for example, believing in the caste system, this is something that Sikhs do not do, or this is something, or believing in idols, this is something that Sikhs do not do. And then if you are kind of going to an event with your partner who is doing those things, you're almost going against your religion. You're going against the very essence as to why your religion was actually created to begin with. So I think it really does depend on that. If you take parts of it and you think, you know what, I'm on a journey and I want to take the best parts of both religions and I want to go ahead with something that works for both of us and that works for our family, I guess you could do that. But actually, if you are following a religion and you are following it thoroughly, it is, I think there are a lot of conflicts.
Challenges, definitely.
Yeah, there are loads of conflicts. And what happens if you've got a very inquisitive child who wants to know, hang on a minute.
So you're a little bit more pessimistic or skeptic about, if you are about compromise effectively.
Yeah.
Okay.
If you are religious.
It's the biggest.
Yeah.
Priti, what do you think about that?
I think at the end of the day, everyone has the right to their own opinion. So, for example, if I was a Hindu and I really wanted to marry a Hindu and follow Hindu values, why not? If I was a Hindu and I'm curious about the world and accepting and tolerant to bring someone into my life who is from a different culture, and I know I'd be okay with it and it'd be fine for me, it's fine. I think, the main premise of any religion is that we're all human beings, and it's the element of respect that I saw my mother and father have. It's just amazing. They never spoke in terms of, it would be a deficit to have a child of two religions. They were able to raise us in a way where we understand both religions. So, I've read the Bhagavad Gita. I went to a Catholic school. We were taught about the Bible. And now in my life as a 31-year-old woman, I take my own interpretation of it. But every time I meet a Hindu, let's say if I go to, when I went to Varanasi, I met Hindus who were reading Sanskrit. I was learning about Kriya Yoga. I'm just in awe of how beautiful Hinduism is, and I'm in awe of how beautiful Christianity is. And if I met someone who went to a mosque regularly and they spoke about their religion and they said something really beautiful about Allah, I'd be like, wow, that's amazing. It's just, there's no hierarchy in my sense. It's just respect.
Thank you very much for your time there, Priti, on all this. Priti Mohyal there. Right, final points actually from all of you actually on the issue of children as well. Sam, I'll come. So we've talked to you about that, Sam. But Naveed, what are your thoughts on that? We didn't actually get around to that.
I think every society brings up their children in a way that the parents have a right to bring up the children and encourage morals that they believe are true in their children, and they will encourage their children to be brought up in the same way. So I think it's really important that the parents have a common ground on which to bring their children up on.
Can the common ground, as Priti was saying, be not on religion but on respect of all religion?
I think mine was based on religion, but my parents also encouraged us to respect other religions. They had close Sikh friends and Christian friends, and even now I love talking to people about their faith and understanding how they believe, because if anything, I do find a huge common ground in the fact that people who believe and have good values and have good morals, but at the same time, I'm going to go back to the analogy I used at the start. When you talk about an investment opportunity, would you not want the best for your spouse, for your children, and you'd encourage and wish that upon them as well? If you really want it and believe in it yourself, you definitely encourage that upon your children.
Thank you. It's been good talking to the three of you, actually, and to Priti as well on this. Mandy, also to Naveed and to Samyak here as well, and Priti as well. I'm going to finish with a couple of text messages that we've had in before we talk more about religion, actually, in our final segment of the programme. But this WhatsApp's come in saying, mixed marriages only work for those in the marriage. They are never fully accepted, neither are the children. And if one person feels isolated from extended families, they will then exclude themselves, so they naturally drift apart. I'm Sikh, wanted to marry my girlfriend who was Muslim. Her mum was okay for it to happen, but her dad, uncles, brothers, point blank refused. More messages on this coming in as well. One saying, religion does not make you a good or bad person. It makes you religious. Being a good person comes from within, regardless of your faith or lack of. A final message saying, it seems as though the guests speaking on the topic of interfaith marriages base their morals on a holy book only. Does this mean they see atheists as moralless? I have morals based on own inner compass, and I would like to be with someone who can establish wrong from right without the guide of a book. 13 minutes past 12. Thank you for all your comments here on this week's God Panel.